Hello and welcome back to Ad Hoc Politics, the video series where some random guy rants and raves at you from a random location on the internet. What is up, guys? It's been a hot minute since I jumped on here and shared my thoughts, so I thought I'd give a little update to kind of the geopolitical situation and current events in the two big conflicts, the war in Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East. Just a real quick side note. I have stopped using all AI in these videos. Now, previously, I was generating thumbnails using AI. That is no longer the case. No AI was used in this video. This is straight stream of consciousness nonsense from me to you. But anyways, let's jump into it. So it's been a few months since we hopped on here, and let's start with the Ukraine war. All right. So over the summer, there's been this narrative in the West and the usual places, the Times, Wall Street Journal, about how Ukraine has turned the tide of the war. And they've launched a very, I would say, successful strategic strike campaign into Russia where they're sending their long range drones and hitting all these refineries. And more recently, they're hitting the Wildberries warehouses. Now, some of these strikes have been very impressive. Uh, the Ukrainians struck a oil refinery in Yakutsk, which is deep in Siberia. That's got to be thousands of kilometers from Ukraine. I have no idea how they pulled off that operation, but I would like to know. They must have had to smuggle the drones deep into Russia somewhere and have their agents or partisans launch them and guide them. Very impressive operation. And we've seen a lot of really impressive videos of refineries burning, of big plumes of smoke, and all that. But I think something to kind of keep in mind when it comes to the Ukraine war in general is that Zelensky and his entourage, they come from the entertainment industry. He was an actor, a comedian, an entertainer, and his chief of staff, who had, before he got had to resign because of the corruption, Yermak, was his producer. And so they're very, very good at these kind of PR campaigns, at media framing, media operations. And I think more than anything else, this drone campaign has been a media operation, a PR campaign. And much of the war has been fought this way with these kind of media framing operations. And you have all these people in the West that are willing, partners that will pick up the story and spin it up and push it out. And it's basically propaganda. And so at the end of the day, though, what has this campaign really accomplished? Now, they struck a lot of these refineries and they did some damage. It definitely did some pain. But is it going to cause the Russian economy to collapse? I don't think so. And are the refineries destroyed? No. You did a little bit of damage, blew up some tanks, but these are big industrial facilities, and if you want to actually destroy them, you got to hit them over and over and over again. And the drones have very small payloads. They're really only good for, again, PR, for making a big fire and then claiming it's destroyed. But in reality, that thing could be up and running again in as little as a week or two, or parts of it are still functioning. So strategically, I don't think it's really had much of effect. It's definitely caused a little bit of pain, but it's kind of like getting poked, with a pinprick over and over again. It causes some pain and some discomfort. Is it going to kill you? Probably not. And then the attacks on the Wildberries facilities, which is equivalent, the Russian equivalent to Amazon, is just it screams of just desperation and it's just pure lunacy. There's 750,000 Russian troops in Ukraine or around Ukraine, and you're going to defeat the Russian army by attacking Amazon warehouses? That's going to cause the Russian economy to crumble by attacking some warehouses? Really? Um, it's just laughable, and it's just a media campaign. These are soft targets. They're not defended. You can burn a bunch of shit. And yeah, some people might not get their packages, and that sucks for them, but it's not going to cause the economy to collapse. It's not going to defeat the Russian army. It's in effect pointless as far as the war goes. It's going to have virtually no effect on the war or the Russian economy. And this is what you're expending your military resources on, are these campaigns. And so if the war is going so well, as I'm being told by Wall Street Journal and the Times, why did they sack Sersky and Fedorov, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army and the defense minister? Both gone within the past couple weeks. If you're having this victorious push and you've turned the tide, why are you changing all of your military leadership? So you got to cut through that narrative and look at what's actually happening and realize things are not going very well for Ukraine. In fact, things are going extremely poorly, and we can get into that now. So the Russians have retaliated for the air campaign by attacking the Black Sea ports and Odessa and the surrounding ports, and started to enforce a Iranian-style blockade, meaning that they'll attack any ships that enter these ports. They've attacked a lot of them already, and most ship owners are now saying, okay, it's not worth it. We're no longer going there because we're going to get attacked, just like the Straits of Hormuz. It's effectively blockaded Ukraine and cut them off from exporting through the ocean. So they're effectively landlocked now. And as far as an economic strategic strike, this is massively more impactful than blowing up some Amazon warehouses or striking some refineries. This cuts off their grain exports, which is one of the few things that the Ukrainian economy really has, is grain exports, and not to mention imports of vital resources and war material coming from the sea. So effectively landlocking Ukrainian is a way more strategic, it's a way heavier strategic blow than what the Ukrainians have been able to inflict. Even if it's not getting as much media attention, that doesn't really matter. And furthermore, the Ukrainian air defense systems seem to be almost completely exhausted. In the last 2 ballistic missile attacks, they have not intercepted a single ballistic missile. And so missiles are raining down on Kiev unhindered. And that's only going to get worse. Zelensky's begging anybody who will listen for Patriot missiles. I know there's Patriot missiles out there. We need Patriot missiles. Let us make the Patriot missiles. There's no more Patriot missiles. We've already expended multiple generations of air defense munitions in this conflict, and they take a long time to produce. They're not a simple, it's not like making a drone. These things are super high tech and super expensive. I think the United States can produce like 800 a year, and there's just not that, there's no more stockpiles. The United States is already dangerously low on these munitions and is involved in a ballistic missile war in the Middle East. The United States needs every single Patriot missile they have left, and even then, it's still not enough. So Ukraine's air defense situation is basically in crisis mode now, and it's only going to get worse. You can't pull these things out of your ass. And the Russians are able to produce missiles much cheaper at a much higher rate than the air defense munitions can keep up with. And so that's only going to get worse. Furthermore, the Russian army is advancing. They took Konstantinivka, which had the pre-war population, the highest pre-war population of any city they've taken besides Mariupol. So essentially the biggest city they've taken in 4 years, they just took. They're at the gates of Kramatorsk. I think they're 9 kilometers from Kramatorsk. They're attacking in Kharkov region, in Sumy region, in Zaporozhye region. They're at the gates of Orkiv. They took Liman. The ground war is going horrible for Ukraine. They're just holding on. And the idea that they're going to push the Russian army out, how? Yeah, you can kill a lot of their guys with drones, but you can't defeat the army that way. If you want to actually push them out, you're going to need an army yourself. You need soldiers, which they don't have. They just have a bunch of drone operators. So the war is being lost on the ground. Make no mistake about it. And strategically, it is also being lost. I don't see any way for Ukraine to win at this point. The only way they can hope is that Putin dies and that his replacement will be not someone way more hardline, which it probably will be if someone like Medvedev takes over, or the Russian economy just collapses and they can no longer make war. But I don't see any evidence of that happening. We've been told that it's about to collapse, it's about to collapse, it's about to collapse. I don't see any evidence of it. In fact, it's doing better than ever because the price of oil is so much fucking higher now because of the stupid fucking war with Iran and the shutting down of the Straits of Hormuz. So this hope for a miracle is not a strategy for the Ukrainians. They got to get realistic here. The war is lost. It's not going to get any better. And so I think you got to just stomach it and make peace. And I don't see any other way out for them. Now, the current leadership, they don't want to do that. Those guys want to go down with the ship. You got to get rid of those guys. Zelensky is not leading you to victory. He's leading you to ruin. You got a guy like Zaluzhny who is at least more realistic. Zaluzhny had a press conference this week talking to other Ukrainian diplomats, and he said some very interesting things, kind of said a lot of the quiet parts out loud. He said that NATO doctrine is hopelessly outdated, that it's essentially World War II doctrine. He's not wrong about that. He said Ukraine will never join NATO. They've been led down this path for 12 years now, and they're never actually going to get in. He's not wrong about that. And he said that it would take NATO 12 years of modernizing their tactics and their forces to get to 50% of Russia's current capacity. So 12 years to get to half of where Russia is today. And he's not wrong about that. The NATO forces, the structures, the weapons platforms, they are all hopelessly outdated. This is a new style of warfare that has emerged, and the rigidness of the NATO infrastructure and command has not allowed it to adapt to the rapidly changing nature of warfare. And that includes the United States. And we can kind of jump over to Iran now. I think that basically covers Ukraine. But the situation with Iran is not going well. The ceasefire that was in effect, the memorandum of mutual understanding or whatever, that fell apart, obviously. As I predicted in my last video, that was not going to work. So now we're kind of back to clusterfuckville. And the Iranians control the Straits of Hormuz, and the United States can't really do much. We can fire off some tomahawks and maybe some bombs, hit some military bases, but we cannot wrest the Strait of Hormuz away from the Iranians. They have effectively won the war. They have strategically won the war. Now, as far as tactical victories go, I'm sure the United States has many more tactical victories, or they blew up lots of military bases and stuff like that. But strategically, it wasn't enough to knock them out of the fight. It was a dumb idea in the first place. There was no realistic way to win this war. It was very much like the thinking in Ukraine that we're hoping for a miracle. If we kill Khomeini, everything's just going to collapse. And it didn't happen. And so now you're stuck with the fallout, and there's no path to victory. The only path to victory involves invading the country. This is a country of 80 to 90 million people. You're going to need a massive force for that. There's no place to deploy them. You're going to be dealing with the new forms of warfare, drone warfare, which you are not ready for. You take massive losses. It's going to be ungodly expensive to do it, and there's just no political willpower to invade Iran, and victory is not guaranteed even if you did. So it's not going to happen. The United States is not going to invade Iran. If they do, it would be a colossal mistake. Now, maybe the situation in Iran can change. The United States can attempt to counter-blockade Iran, but they have a large, land borders, and they still have the Caspian Sea. So even if you cut them off from the Indian Ocean, you're not going to starve them completely because they have these massive other avenues to export from. It's going to definitely hurt them, but I don't see any realistic victory for the United States here. I think you're going to have to just kind of come to I think you're going to have to just basically cede the Persian Gulf to them, and countries like Kuwait and Iraq and Bahrain and the UAE and Qatar, Saudi Arabia, they're all going to have to start building pipelines to the Gulf of Aden, to the Red Sea, to the Mediterranean. And that's going to take decades, probably 20 years to get all that up and running. But if you do that, if you circumvent the Persian Gulf, then all of a sudden the winning hand that the Iranians have will no longer be a winning hand. And that would be really the only way to win this conflict is a long-term economic strategy to pivot away from the Persian Gulf. Militarily, I don't think it's winnable. You just without an invasion, and I just don't see that happening. That would be so unbelievably unpopular and be so difficult to get the support from regional partners, and let alone the useless fucks in Europe. Let it slip, but there's no way the Europeans are going to help you with that. So the war's lost. It was a terrible idea, and it's worked out exactly as I expected it would, and exactly as how I said it would. So that's kind of how I see the two conflicts happening, both going extremely poorly for the West, and we'll see how it plays out. Now, maybe I'm wrong. There's always the possibility that the Russian economy is about to collapse and that Putin is about to be deposed, or that the Iranian people are going to rise up and take control of the country and get rid of the IRCG and the Ayatollahs. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see any evidence of that happening. So we'll just have to wait and see. But thank you guys for stepping in here and listening to me rant and rave. Peace out.